Sure. Has anybody seen, there is a bigger podium. I believe it's black. Has anybody seen that? Has wheels on it. You got nothing, Carrie. 0. We will locate it at some point, I'm hoping. Good evening. Bear with me. I don't know why. Carrie, I was talking to Carrie. I said, I'm super nervous to teach class. Carrie said, why? You preach pretty often. I'm like, it's different. I don't know why it's different, but it's different. I think it's the time factor. I just have too much time. So I'm going to try my best not to get you out of here with, 35 minutes left. But I don't think that long will be an issue. This class is serving the Lord, getting more out of our service to the Lord. So I've kind of been doing a little bit of a series over in Taft about our service to the Lord, but this is another part that I kind of dug up and went through. And today we're going to talk, as you can see, about our assembly together. And I want us to understand, too, that my focus here is not just in our assembly as the church itself, but also our assembly together as Christians. So I will kind of allude to both throughout the class. Your participation is very accepted and wanted if you have anything to say. There are, as Mark mentioned, there's some questions on the back that I did pretty quickly. So if you need those, they are back there. If there were out of copies, let me know, and we can more than likely run off a couple more. So we'll get right into it. As in discussing the topic of serving the Lord, it comes in many ways, and of course I don't intend on going through every single aspect of our service to the Lord, but I do want to touch on a couple things. So anybody that needs a handout or would like a handout, if you raise your hand, Travis will bring one to you. I don't intend on going through every aspect, but over the next 4 weeks after this one, we will touch on a few things. Next week we're going to touch on singing. And then prayer and the Lord's Supper, and lesson number 5, I'm still tossing around a couple ideas. But I think it's very important that we point out the need to serve in the assembly. When we're together, we're serving one another and we're serving the Lord. And I think that all of us know that, but that's something I think we need to take into account and be mindful of, I guess. And how we can make sure that we get the most out of our assembly, and how we can get the most out of when we're together and when we're studying, when we're in services, when we're worshiping, whatever we may be doing, how we can get the most out of it. Because part of serving the Lord is worshiping and being together as Christians. So in Acts, the 13th chapter, unfortunately, I do not have this up there, and I am also going to do my very, very best. Got a warranty status loading, so that's great. I'm going to do my best to kind of juggle everything I got going here. Actually, if you look at your handout, the first question, what should our attitude be when we come together? Anybody? Should be positive, okay. I'm going to do my best to repeat everything because I've watched a couple classes and I forget you can't hear. Christy? Be joyful. Very good. Thank you. James?
To want to edify one another.
Yep, to lift each other up, to want to edify one another. Anybody else? Loopy? An attitude of love. Wonderful. Yep, I think that that's very important, that we love one another because we're created in the image of God, and I think that that's something that is super valuable in the fact that we need to have an attitude of love when we're together. And I just put that we should be glad, we should be joyful, that was brought up, that we should look forward to worshiping the Lord and studying His Word and being with His people. In Acts, the 13th chapter, in verses 16 and 17, this is the only scripture I do not have up there, brethren, so I apologize for that. The example of David, I'm going to give you a little bit of context here. Acts 13, beginning in verse 16, says, Paul stood up and motioning with his hand said, Men of Israel, and you who fear the Lord, listen. The God of this people, Israel, chose our fathers and made the people great during their stay in the land of Egypt. And with an uplifted arm, he led them out from it. For a period of about 40 years, he put up with them in the wilderness. When he had destroyed 7 nations in the land of Canaan, he distributed their land as an inheritance, all of which took about 450 years. After these things, he gave them judges until Samuel the prophet. Then they asked for a king, and God gave them Saul the son of Kish, a man of the tribe of Benjamin, for 40 years. This is my point here. After he had removed him, he raised up David to be the king, concerning whom he also testified and said, I have found David the son of Jesse, a man after my heart, who will do all my will. And in serving the Lord, I think it's very important that we understand and we think about the fact that we are to follow that example. Is this the way that God would talk about us in our service to him? The example of David. So, I say that. Let me try and get this going here. In Psalm the 122nd chapter and verse 1, I was glad when they said to me, let us go into the house of the Lord. Do we share this attitude? Is this our attitude when we show up with brethren? When we show up to be part of a Bible study, or we show up to be part of a worship service, is this the attitude that we have, that the psalmist writes? In Psalm the 100th chapter, the whole chapter, and this is a point that we need to serve God with gladness, is the point here. But Psalm 100, beginning in verse 1, says, shout joyfully to the Lord, all the earth. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come before him with joyful singing. Know that the Lord himself is God. It is he who has made us, and not we ourselves. We are his people and the sheep of his pasture. Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him. Bless his name. For the Lord is good. His loving kindness is everlasting, and his faithfulness to all and his faithfulness to all generations. Is this what we look like? Is this who we are when we look at Psalm the 100th chapter? When we gather together, do we come in gladness? Do we look forward to these things? Are we singing joyfully, which we will talk about next week? Is this what we look like? There's a lot that go to services, go to Bible studies, probably not so much the Bible studies, but a lot of people that go to service that simply don't enjoy it. We've all seen those people. We've all probably been those people at some point in our life, right? That don't necessarily enjoy it. And the question I ask there is, are we actually here? Are we taking in what's going on? Are we listening? Are we paying attention? Are we here? Because people notice, and I'll address this later. Visitors notice. Are they seeing love amongst ourselves? Are they seeing our love for the Lord, our want to serve and give service to the Lord in what we're doing? Because people observe what we're doing. And when this happens and I'm going to speak personally, when this happens in my life and I notice that I'm not enjoying and not getting as much as I should be getting, I feel like, out of worship service or out of a Bible study or out of being together with other Christians, I ask myself, am I studying enough? Am I truly thinking about what I'm here to do? Do I really know the Lord? Am I wanting to know as much as possible about the Lord? When you love somebody, don't you want to know everything there is about them? We claim to love the Lord. Do we want to know everything about him? Don't I find joy in what I'm doing? When we think about what God has given us and the sacrifices and all of these things, when we look at our service to him, how do I not find joy in that? Do we encourage one another? Am I here to, as James pointed out, edify those that are around me? And most importantly, and the focal point of this class, is how can I get more out of the assembly? How can I get the most that I possibly can glean, that I can possibly get out of this meeting together? Am I focused on that? How do I do that? Question number 2. How can I encourage others? Larry. Wonderful. By acknowledging their presence. Simply walking up and shaking hands. Larry, it's great to see you. Right? Great. Good point. Anybody else? How do we encourage others? Autumn? Nothing? Okay. That's kind of, it is. It's realistically acknowledging their presence, knowing that, showing them that you value the fact that they're here, right? That you value their friendship, their commonality as a Christian with you, their want to praise. Terry?
Making a point to reach out or like say hello to other people who you don't just always say hello to. Like I always hit these people I know because I sit over here, so I walk down and see these people. But I have a harder time getting back to you guys over there. So I need to make it a point because they're important to me to mingle further than just my little area.
Exactly. Basically, that we need to make sure that we're kind of getting out and shaking hands with everybody, right? That we're talking to everybody. We get very caught up in our little circle of people, right? I'm talking to Chris and I'm talking to Tyler and all of and James and Tyler are, but am I getting out there and really talking to more? I will say that I am not good at this. This is something I truly need to focus on and work through because I'm not the best at that. My dad, on the other hand, will shake hands with every person every time he walks into the building. So you would think, but it didn't translate over, I guess. But anybody else? How can we encourage one another or others in general? Yes, Phil.
Sometimes I get encouragement just by seeing the other people here.
Absolutely. You get encouragement and you're edified because there's other people here wanting to worship and wanting to serve God. Right? That we're here and we're singing songs and we're studying and it's encouraging your presence here. Richard Thomas always brings up often young mothers, right? I've watched Terry as I preach and Wade is crawling all over her. She's getting probably very, very little out of what I'm saying or what's going on in a Bible class, but that is encouragement to me, right? And I see it and it's not just my wife, I see it with all the young mothers. And fathers as well. I mean, you get tied up in this kind of stuff, and it is encouraging that you're here, right, Tadell? Janine?
Send people notes of appreciation, you see.
Send people notes, is that what you said? Send people notes of appreciation. Has anybody here got a card in the mail when you're not here? There's a bunch of us, right? Isn't that encouraging? I've gotten cards that when I was here, I've gotten cards from members of this congregation that are super uplifting, and it's like, hey, I just want you to know I saw you and your family, and you guys are uplifting to me. How encouraging is that? This should be something that we're striving to do and lifting up others, right? Anybody else before I move on? Sorry.
Sorry, I have to say I'm anxious too. Just by like being in each other's lives outside of church.
Yes.
You know, being like, hey, how was your LASIK surgery last week? Like knowing what's happening throughout their lives and then being united on Sunday, it just is more encouraging.
Right. And that's my point in the class as well. She brings up the fact that we need to be involved. We should be involved in one another's lives. Like, hey, how was your vacation last week? Roger, how's the grandbaby doing? That type of stuff, right? How are, just different aspects of our lives, because that's uplifting as well, because we're part of one another, right? We love each other. Again, going back to the point that if we love one another, don't we want to know more about each other? Don't we want to be there to pray and help people through struggles and rejoice with them when something wonderful happens? I've heard that 1,000 times, but do we really take that into account and understand that is something that we need to be doing? Loopy.
Well, it's very encouraging, whatever another word would be, very gratifying to realize that the people that you're here with are also running the race, finishing the journey,
Sure.
helping you get there, and being together just brings it all together.
Yeah, Loopy pointed out that we share in the fact that we're all running this race together, that we're there for one another and we're helping each other through the mountains and valleys that this physical life has to offer, right? And that's encouraging. So, yes. Chelsea, sorry.
I know we said this for the last one, I think like having a good attitude, like when you come into a building and everyone's like happy, it's way better. I've been to other places where it's like,
That
looks like it's a downer to be
Yeah.
there.
that inviting atmosphere, right? That's an encouraging thing, especially to visitors. Again, going back to, do they see love amongst the members, Do they see that when they come in the door, right? Or do we have the proper attitude toward one another? And I get it, we have bad days, right? Everybody's got a bad day, and sometimes I may not be the most happy person and greatest person to pick to talk to on that given day, but I need to work on that. But still, that can be very encouraging, is simple attitude when we walk in the building or when we're together at all. I'm drawn closer to God and encouraged by those that are around me. One of the duties of the church is to edify one another, that was brought up earlier. And I want you to experience what I do and what many do and what David did in Psalm 122nd chapter. He was glad when they said that, let us go to the house of the Lord. Let's go worship. Let's go be together. Do we have that attitude? So, the assemblies of the church, we're here to encourage one another. In Hebrews, the 10th chapter, verses 24 and 25, it says, and let us consider how to stimulate one another to love and good deeds, not forsaking our own assembling together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. Are we encouraging one another? Because this is part of serving the Lord, is serving His people. Right? Don't we see that? That we see that part of people are created in the image of God. We are here to help and to serve one another, to share in things, which we've pointed out thus far. We come together to worship and to edify. Question 3. How do I personally benefit from encouraging others? So we talked about how we can encourage one another, but how do we personally, I feel like we've touched on this, so we'll make this pretty quick, but how can I benefit from encouraging others?
You see the other person's response.
You see the other person's response, right? And that can be very uplifting because maybe they've changed something. Maybe you've helped them through something, right? Kenny?
This is kind of 2 and 3, but I was going to say, as far as encouraging people, us participating in class, asking questions, making a point, might encourage people that don't regularly attend to do the same thing.
Sure.
And as far as how you benefit from that, if somebody asks a question you were thinking or brings up a point you hadn't thought of, then you get more knowledge.
Right. And Kenny brings up a point that just simply talking, bringing up different things in class, maybe you have done that and somebody else has benefited from that because now they're more driven to ask a question, and maybe somebody has brought up something that you didn't think about. How many times have we been there in class, right? Somebody brings up a point. I can't remember what it was. We were studying some, and Ian Jones brought up the fact that they were made to eat a golden idol. The point he brought up, I had never had crossed my mind, but now every time I read that, I think about that comment. That's great. That's encouraging. Ian? Wonderful.
Otherwise, I'm kind of missing the point. If I think what's good enough to just get my handshake and hi and on my way, there's some encouragement there, I guess. But
Sure.
we're called to be a family of sorts, and so there's going to be a much deeper relationship there. I'll tell you right now, being the first one, I had struggled with that too.
Sure.
But I think that's how we can personally benefit from that, being a better servant to each other.
Ian brings up the point that with people making different comments and just being more involved with one another, we can grow closer, and that benefits me in major ways. Travis?
One benefit is just it's a reminder that I have a lot more in common with people here than I think.
Yeah.
People who are probably a generation older than I am, or get to talk to somebody and you realize there's a lot more in common that we share.
There's a lot more commonality that we share with other people as we get to have these conversations with people, right? And again, I think that a lot of this turns into, I don't know, and I know that most of you, I go out and do something that doesn't have anything to do with, go fishing or go hunting. That's what I do. And oftentimes it ends up, if I go with one of the brethren especially, it ends up going into some type of biblical talk, right? We're talking about Bible class, or we're talking about some type of question that I have or that they have, or maybe a disagreement that we have, and we're trying to work through that and study that out. It's a wonderful thing. Vance, and then we got to move on.
Sure, I think every opportunity we have to encourage
Absolutely. That we're the more we engage with one another. That say that again, Vance. Sorry.
It's just that each and every one of us here, just in being here, we have an opportunity every time we see each other to engage and fulfill the love of God that we as Christians are commanded to do.
We engage and fulfill the love of God. What a wonderful thing, right? Okay, so I was worried about time, and we're running right through it. Okay. So my point was that we keep each other on track, right? That's just one of the things I think that when we consider how we encourage one another, it helps me to keep on track and stay in the right way when I'm having these conversations and have the relationships that we do with one another in serving one another and in serving the Lord. In Hebrews, the 3rd chapter, in verses 12 through 14, it says, "Take care, brethren, that there not be in any of you an evil, unbelieving heart that falls away from the living God. But encourage one another day after day, as long as it is still called today, so that none of you will be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. For we have become partakers of Christ, if we hold fast the beginning of our assurance firm until the end." We are here to help one another and to help each other when we see our brother erring. Like I'm one of the ones that will bring this up. If you see me doing something wrong, please come tell me, because I want to be right. I want to go to heaven. And I know that all of us share that, but I think that's something I forget, at least often, is that we are here to help each other and to encourage one another to stay on that straight and narrow path. One of the first signs of falling into the wrong way can be that we don't want to spend time with God's people. We don't want to spend time with other Christians. We're failing to take the opportunities that we can to meet. And I'm not speaking of when you can't, right? There's a home Bible study on Mondays. That Mondays are terrible for me. Mondays are terrible for you, whatever it may be. Or if I do one on Friday at my house and they're terrible for you, I get that. That's not what I'm speaking of. But are we taking the opportunities when we can to take advantage of those things? And are we taking the opportunity to meet with one another? The obvious one is the first day of the week. 1 Corinthians 16th chapter, verses 1 and 2. "Now concerning the collection for the saints, as I directed the churches of Galatia, so do you also. On the first day of every week, each one of you put aside and save, as he may prosper, so that no collections be made when I come." And also in Acts the 20th chapter, in verse 7, Paul says that they came together on the first day of the week to break bread. So that's I feel like that's kind of the easy one, right? That's the one that my mind goes to immediately when we're talking about assembling together on the first day of the week. This is something simple, but the opportunity is there. Are we taking that? Are we really sharing in breaking of bread, in prayer, and singing, and in preaching, and doing all of these different things? Are we taking that opportunity? And in Acts the 2nd chapter, in verse 42, "They were continually devoting themselves to the apostles, teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer." Bible study. Are we taking the opportunity to devote ourselves to teaching? Are we taking advantage of the Bible studies that we're able to go to, right? This one right here, you guys are all at a Bible study, right? And that's great. Are we taking advantage of those things? Gospel meetings, bringing the lost and edifying the saved, meeting others and developing relationships. Are we taking these opportunities to come together with brethren? So, how do we get more out of the assembly? This may seem very elementary, very simple, but preparation makes the difference, right? Especially when we're speaking of the assembly of the church on Sundays, right? On the first day of the week. Preparation makes a difference. The right mindset. Do we have that right mindset? Are we taking the time? And I'm going to skip question 4 and go straight to question 5. And I'll take a couple comments here if you feel so moved. What do you do to prepare for services? Susan?
I think about my attire, my wardrobe. I'm not coming to services in my PJs. I've made a conscious choice to not necessarily get the most expensive outfit, but a very proper outfit so that I'm coming here in a serious mind frame of doing something to serve God.
That's something I didn't even think about when I was studying this. Susan said that she takes the time to pay attention to what she's wearing. She's not showing up in just whatever. She's taking the time to get ready, to have that. I think that that's part of being in the right mindset, is getting ready to go to services. Mary.
When I was having difficulty, I was sick,
Mm-hmm.
having lots of trouble, I got up one morning and I wanted to go to church. So I came in my gown and robe.
You know what? And that's a great point, Mary. Just because you needed to be here, correct? And that's helping as well. But I know that your mindset was correct in that. I saw one more hand, I think. David. Oh.
Get a good night's rest. Go to bed so that you wake up fresh in the morning.
And I'm gonna get into that in just a second, Dave. Chelsea.
I think like, especially like when we have things on Wednesday, like, or even like the singing
Mhm.
night, like that's not, I'll be honest, it's not my favorite
Sure.
sometimes. And I think, like I may have had like a lousy day, but I try to like leave whatever that is like out the door and then just come in like open.
Right. Sometimes we have those bad days, right? And then where is the place that that we need to be in those times? With brethren, right? That's where we're encouraged that we talked about. I'm going to move on, guys. So, but Dave pointed out something that we need to have the right mindset, and I think that my thought process is we need to pray and think about what we're doing. That I'm studying this. A couple people said meditate, right? It's not something I necessarily do, I don't think, but pray and meditate before we're here about what we are here to do and what our goal is when we're here. Are we really focused on the right things? In John the 8th chapter, verse 29, it says, "And he who sent me is with me. He has not left me alone, for I always do the things that are pleasing to him." Are we striving to be like Jesus and pleasing to God, and having that right mindset and being prepared when we show up, right? And what can I do to be more edifying to others? We've talked about that. How do I lift others up? And you guys brought up wonderful points on that. And remember why we're here. Why are we here? Why are we here? We're here to worship and serve. Acts the 20th chapter, verse 35. "And everything I showed you, that by working hard in this manner, you must help the weak and remember the words of the Lord Jesus, that he himself said, 'It is more blessed to give than to receive.'" And getting to Dave's point, just some thoughts on being prepared. And again, this may seem very, very elementary. Get some sleep, right? I was talking with somebody about this, and that was the first thing that they brought up. It starts on Saturday night. Whenever you were a kid, right? I can remember growing up, that we were not allowed to stay at anybody's house on Saturday night because we would likely not get enough sleep and probably be groggy to go to church the next morning, or not ready when Dad came to pick us up. So get some sleep. Be prepared. Get up early. Get up on time, right? If you're the old military saying, if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. If you're late, don't bother showing up. That's not true, but just a thought is that we need to be prepared. And this is how it all starts, is that is our body prepared? Are we well rested? Are we ready to take all of these things in? Yes, ma'am.
We're lucky that we have Google and we have email, and the elders actually print out the bulletins for us so that we can spend the evening Saturday going over the material
Sure.
that's going to be.
It's going to be presented, right? So
So you have an idea
of what's going to be done.
going to be done.
Right. So, and Tammy brings up the point that this may be something Tammy does that all of us can get, is that the emails from Randy and from Carrie go out on Saturday nights. Are you kind of looking that over, seeing what's going to happen? I know that there are many that do. Are we paying attention? Are we trying everything that we can? And on that note, I promise you I will have questions on Wednesday for next Sunday, so you can look those over rather than shotgunning and throw them in the back right whenever I got here. So, a little extra thought makes a huge difference. Just putting in a little bit of time, effort, energy to just being prepared. I mean, I know that with us, if we get especially with Wade, if we get all of his stuff ready, right? If I locate his belt, I can never find that kid's belt anywhere. If I find his belt on Saturday night, we are good to go Sunday morning. If I wait till Sunday morning, oh man. Janine?
Can we throw Bible class into this?
Sure.
Prepare,
Be prepared for Bible class?
because week after week after week, people pick up a sheet and they come, their lesson is not done, they're
Right.
not ready to respond
Sure.
or to contribute. And
Sure.
to me, that is such an important thing.
Sure. And Janine brings up the point that, there are handouts, and this is on me this week. There was not a handout for you prior to, but are we taking those handouts before that class happens, and are we really looking them over, studying them, answering the questions if need be? Some people study that stuff and don't write anything down. That's fine. But you've at least prepared, correct, Janine? That was your point. That you've at least prepared your mind to what we're going to be talking about. I have here, think about those who are present. The members of the congregation, and we are here to, and I appreciate the encouragement of other Christians. This was brought up, just people being here, just somebody else being here and participating in a Bible class. Someone next to you, in front of you, behind you, singing is encouraging. Making comments, whatever it may be. Visitors that may be here. In Hebrews the 13th chapter and verse 2, do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by this some have entertained angels without knowing it. Be conscious of those that are here, and make sure that we're getting the most out of our assembly together. We need to pay attention to those that are present. Understand that visitors do just as we do and draw conclusions. I'll go back to this again. Are they seeing the love between brethren? Are they seeing the love for the Lord in our service? Are we taking the time to greet them, to talk to them, to understand something about them, or try to at least? Again, I'm put myself at the forefront of needing to fix that. Are we acting as though the Lord is here? Are we prepared for class? Are we thinking about these things? Are we acting like Jesus was here? Right? Because this may change the way that we think about what we're doing, the way that we prepare, the way that we really think about my attitude, my preparation when coming to an assembly. Being engaged in the service. Are we listening? Not just hearing noise, are we listening? The old adage, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, you should hear twice as much as you speak. But if you have those 2 things on the side of your head, you should be listening and trying to understand what's going on and being tuned in, engaged, if you will, in the service. Mark the 4th chapter, verses 24 and 25. And he was saying to them, take care what you listen to. By your standards of measure, it will be measured to you, and more will be given you besides. For whoever has, to him more shall be given, and whoever does not have, even what he has shall be taken away from him. Because if you have those things, blessings will come to those who hear. There will be more given, if you will. Being more engaged in the service, singing and praying. We're going to talk about this at length next week, and this is going to be something that I'm going to go over Ephesians 5 and Colossians 3 next week, over and over and over again. Colossians 3:16, let the word of Christ richly dwell within you, with all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another with psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing with thankfulness in your hearts to God. Are we joining in these things? Are we joining in singing? Are we singing? And I know that this is was brought up, I think Chelsea brought it up, that this may not be her favorite thing to do. And I commend those that it's not their favorite thing to do, but yet still do it, because I am on the opposite end of that spectrum. I love to sing. I don't think I'm very good at it, but I love to do it. But are we joining in this? Because this is part of lifting praise to the Lord, right? We are praising God. That is what we're doing, but it's also uplifting to those around us. When someone's leading a prayer, are we praying with them? Are we really thinking about the words being spoken? Opening prayer, closing prayer, Lord's Supper, whatever it may be. Are we really thinking about what's being said and making sure that we agree with it? For instance, I guess. Intently listening to the words that they are saying, and if we agree, 1 Corinthians 14:15 says, what is the outcome then? I will pray with the Spirit, and I will pray with the mind also. I will sing with the Spirit, and I will sing with the mind also. Otherwise, if you bless in the Spirit only, how will the one who fills the place of the ungifted say the Amen at your giving of thanks? Since he does not know what you are saying. This is talking about speaking in tongues, but are we listening intently? My point here is to offer that amen, right? I'm in agreement with that. I'm in agreement with that. And lastly, do we want to grow? Do we want to grow as Christians? That's kind of a simple question, because the answer to that from everybody is a resounding yes. But do we want to grow? If we want to grow, we need to be around God's people. We need to be assembled with one another in worship and outside of worship. That's been brought up a couple times. But the more we go, the more we grow. Being around Christian people, being around God's people, pushes us closer to the Lord. This is our conversations with one another. This is the common ground that we share with each other. Lost my questions. And I just make the analogy here that if we want to grow, we have to go. I think you think about physical exercise. The more that you go to the gym, right, the more benefit that you have. My brother, of course, is like just into some self-care right now. He studies a bunch and goes to the gym. That's all he does. Now he doesn't have a neck because he works out constantly. But the more he has gone to the gym, the bigger he has got. Don't we want to do that in meeting with one another? Don't we want to grow closer to the Lord? Don't we want to be strong in our faith and in what we study and what we know and our knowledge of God? Again, if we love the Lord and claim to love the Lord, don't we want to know everything that there is about Him? 1 Timothy, the 2nd chapter, verses 7 and 8. For this I was appointed a preacher and an apostle. I'm telling you the truth, I am not lying. As a teacher of the Gentiles in faith and truth, therefore I want the men in every place to pray, lifting up holy hands without wrath and dissension. Isn't our spiritual growth more important than our physical growth, right? Make that analogy. And I think back to football practice as a kid, right? Pee Wee football, we were there for 45 minutes to an hour. High school, we were there for 2.5 hours. College, we were there, twice a day for 3.5 hours. The more you go, the better you're going to get. We need to want to spend time with each other, to be assembled together with God's people. I think that the thought process of not wanting to meet with God's people, and I'm not talking about the situations that we have come up in life when we can't be here. This is not even remotely what I'm talking about. But I'm thinking when the question comes up that, do I have to go there again? Do I have to go see those people again? It is an immature attitude. It's the improper attitude. It's lacking love for Jesus, and it's lacking love for God and His people. So, are we looking for opportunities to assemble? Are we looking for every opportunity that we can that's doable for us, if you will? Are we looking for those opportunities? Are we trying to spend time with one another, as was brought up, not just in the assembly, but outside the assembly too? Are we looking to be with other Christian people, to assemble together? Not as the church. Are we looking to spend time with, are we looking to spend more time with each other rather than just on Sunday, just on Wednesday? We need to make that time. We need to make time to do those things. We need to make time to spend time with Christian friends, brethren, like-minded Christian people. Let's examine our lives and let's think about, going back to the very beginning of this class, David's attitude in Psalm 122nd chapter when he says he was excited, he was joyful when they said, let's go to the house of the Lord. Let me be with his people. Any questions before we close? I thank you so much for the comments tonight. It's wonderful. Yes.
I was just going to say that along with being like an encouragement and other things for the brethren, as a parent, this is super important for me to remember like the prep and, you know, getting the most out of my worship because I'm an example to my child. And so if I show him that worship is just something like, oh, we have church on Sunday morning and we're rushing it at the last minute and we're not prepared and we didn't do our Bible lessons and all those things, I'm showing him that that's normal. And so when he grows up and that's his normal, I can't be surprised.
Sure. And
So when I do what I'm supposed to do and help him with his Bible lesson and do my Bible lesson and lay our clothes out the night before and get all of those things ready and have the right mindset and come and do what we're supposed to do and spend time with people outside, then he knows that that's the norm, that that's what I expect of our life, that worship isn't just something that we go and do once a week, that it is what our life revolves around.
right. The example that we set, Terry brings up the examples we set, especially to our kids, but those people that maybe not Christians that we spend time with, right? That we show them that this is important, that we prepare for it, that this is that important to us, that this is something we don't miss, right? We're not going to go do something else in lieu of assembling with God's people, right?
So
Anything
like,
else?
Even our neighbors
Yes.
will see.
Yes. Yeah, and it's the people around you. You know, me and Justin Flynn have talked about. He's like, I shouldn't say this too loud, but it's we are so regimented, right? If somebody wanted to, unfortunately, do something at my house, 9:30 in the morning on Sundays, I'm not going to be there, right? Unless I'm sick, which is not good to be saying out loud, I guess, now that I say that. But it's what, to Judy's point, is the people that are around us notice those things. They're always gone. They leave on Sundays twice. They leave on Wednesdays. They're doing this or doing that, right? It's an example that we're setting. Okay. Class is yours, brethren. We are out of time.